I had always really liked my busy, frantic lifestyle, and then I hit 50 and I thought, there's something wrong. I'm too frantic. Meditation is just something you do for yourself. For me, it has helped me be more effective in the things I most care about. It's a strange combo platter of both energy and calm.
There was a quote from Lily Tomlin who said, you know, even if you win the rat race, you're still a rat. I thought about that, and it wasn't until doing Transcendental Meditation that it wasn't a question of how do I find the time. It is you look forward to it. It's your oasis. It's your life preserver. All the metaphors that you can use. And it strengthens you.
I meditate on the train. You're going to think I'm crazy. I meditate in, MRI machines. I meditate in bad flights. And I'm a really nervous, jumpy person. And that has really, completely changed it. I mean, it's exactly what Bob says. It's just ignoring the waves above. And I found the ability to go underneath was actually really quite easy. And I'm a 2-a-dayer. Like, if I don't get the 2, no, but if I don't get the 2, I say to people, I'm like a really cranky, mean person. You gotta let me go over here and do it. And I'm a really nice person when I come out of there.
So let's move along to the heart then, because I thought what was really interesting is that if you go to the American Heart Association's website, they actually have something you can click on, a whole department there about meditation and heart health. I thought that was pretty significant.
So this is amazing. Since 2013, the American Heart Association put out a scientific statement that said transcendental meditation is the only proven form of meditation to reduce blood pressure. And as a doctor or as a clinician, transcendental meditation is the only thing that is prescribable for stress reduction. One of the things that I talk about often is the risk factors. We know the general basic deal. Blood pressure, cholesterol, smoking, diabetes, obesity, family history. But that piece of stress, we know recently, has a huge impact on women's hearts, more so than men. We know how to give medication. We know how to tell people to exercise. We know how to tell people to diet. But until 2013, we never could exactly tell people how to manage their stress. And it's an important, hugely important part of dealing with women's hearts. The one point that I want to make, since 1986, more women died of heart disease than men. Guess what happened in 1986? That's when more women entered the workforce. That's when women entered the workforce just as much as men. So when we look at the lifestyle issues, when we talk about does stress really have an impact, clearly, we got to talk about the juggling act. We have to talk about the leaning in, the leaning out, and all of that, because it makes a difference. And now we have something to say, here's what we can give you. Here's a tool that you can have that can help reduce the stress.
And you're seeing a difference with your patients?
Absolutely. I can have someone walk into my office who all of a sudden their sugars are up, they gained weight, and I'll say, what's going on? What's happening? Really? And the answer is, you know what? I've been under so much stress.
Right.
And what do I say? I can very easily write another prescription. I can very easily say, oh, shame on you, you're eating too many cookies. Or I can actually really address the issue, which is coming down to stress. And many people will admit, this is the problem. But what do I do about it? What is the solution? And the interesting thing about TM is that it's not that mindfulness, it's not just the one-off. When you actually learn how to meditate properly, when you actually do TM, it affects the arteries, they dilate, it affects the cortisol, the epinephrine. All of these things decrease. The heart slows down. The whole system just relaxes, not just while you're doing it, but throughout the day.
Our final interview, brief chat, is with Dr. Fred Travis, who is recognized around the world as one of the leading researchers on the brain and meditation. Dr. Travis heads the Center for Brain, Consciousness, and Cognition. He's had about 40 studies published in peer-reviewed journals on the effects of meditation on the brain. And I'd just like to ask Fred to show us some charts and comment on what we've been talking about.
Thank you, Bobby. So first chart, please. We're going to be talking about the brain. And the reason we're going to talk about the brain is because the brain is the interface between inner and outer. And depending on the quality of your brain functioning, will depending on how you see and hear what I'm saying. Depending on your brain functioning will determine your response. Second thing we're going to talk about the brain is always changing. Your brain is a river, not a rock. As a river cuts into a hill, as it flows down the hill, so what's happening is the streams of electrical activity over your brain are leaving a mark on your brain. And if the experience is holistic, what it leaves is a greater integrated style of functioning. If it's traumatic, what it does is it leaves a dysfunctional mark on the brain. Next slide. This is what the brain looks like from a traumatic experience. What we have here is the traumatic experience turns on the amygdala. In the men, it turns on the amygdala to the right, which is context. In the women, it turns on the amygdala to the left, which are the details of experience. The amygdala is your fear center. So what this is doing is creating a veil of fear through which you're experiencing the world. So you're hypervigilant. You're vulnerable. You think people don't understand you. Because this is what your brain is telling you. In addition, the amygdala is turning on the fight or flight response. The fight or flight response turns off the front part of the brain. Front part of the brain is the boss of the brain. It's what lets you put things together. Now, next slide. Traumatic experiences have turned on the amygdala. To turn it off, we need an experience that's the opposite of trauma. We need an experience which is holistic and not fragmented. An experience which is silent and not chaotic. And meditation experiences bring these kinds of experiences to you. But meditations are different. So we need to choose our meditation thoughtfully. Next slide. There's a lot of information on this slide, so let me take you through it. First, this arrow here on the left is indicating level of cognitive control from lowest to highest. The highest level of cognitive control are meditations that are in focused attention. These are your concentration meditations. You keep the mind on one thing, you don't let the mind move. When you're doing that, this is what your brain looks like. It's called gamma EEG. It's very fast. It's 20 to 50 cycles per second. Meditations in this category, for instance, are Tibetan Buddhists. Loving kindness and compassion. Middle level of control, the category is open monitoring. In these meditations, it's medium level of control because you're letting things go through your mind, but you're not controlling. When you're doing this, you see a slower frequency. It's called theta. It looks like this. It goes up and down 5 to 8 times per second. In this category are meditations like mindfulness, zazen. Now, meditations in these first two categories keep the mind in the process of thinking, of doing. They keep the mind in that same veil of fear that PTSD is turned on. And so what's reported is these meditations have very limited effects on reducing PTSD symptoms. The last category, automatic self-transcending, is lowest level of cognitive control. These are meditations which transcend their own activity. These are meditations which allow you to transcend thinking and experiencing your essence, inner pure consciousness, inner self-awareness. And these have to be automatic. They have to be effortless because any doing would not have let that process happen. Transcendental meditation is in this category. Next slide. This is what the brain is doing during transcendental meditation. What we see here is if it's red, it's more active. So the front of the brain is more active. Notice the subcortical areas of the brain are less active, the colored blue. The front of the brain, your integrative system, is more active. It's able to take experience, put it into a whole. The part of the brain that has to do with hypovigilance is now more quiet. What's happening in transcending is you're resetting the mind and body. What's happening when you're transcending is those fear signals from the brain are being turned off. What's happening is now the integrative center is able to see the bigger picture. The hypervigilance is settling down. TM takes you beyond thinking to silence. Transcending thinking allows you to transcend PTSD. Final slide. bottom line, every experience changes the brain. Trauma turns on the fear center, it turns off the thinking centers of the brain. Transcending leads to a new state, restful alertness. This restores balanced functioning of mind and body. It relieves PTSD. It supports happiness and success in life. Thank you very much.
If you look at what it fundamentally does, Transcendental Meditation, this is a study done with subjects with high blood cholesterol. It's a 1-year study looking at people who practiced TM for that year. And it was associated with a significant reduction in total cholesterol by about 10%. That's 30 millimeters of cholesterol. Now, if you're on a medication for cholesterol, we hope you can get 30 millimeters lower in your blood cholesterol. Well, this happened through Transcendental Meditation alone. Cholesterol is the first big risk factor we talk about with heart disease. The second big risk factor, this is a randomized clinical trial finding improvement in the levels of insulin resistance, glucose, even insulin levels themselves in over 100 people who had coronary blockages after just 4 months, 16 weeks of TM practice. Dramatic changes reflected that were significantly greater than just teaching people about their health. That's the second part of the problem we have with heart disease, which is diabetes. The third big one, but this one, by the way, was funded by the NIH, so it's a reputable organization supporting this work. The next study looked at a randomized trial of hypertension sufferers, people with high blood pressure, showing that Transcendental Meditation produced significant reductions in systolic and diastolic, the high number and the low number of the blood pressure, of 11 and 6 millimeters respectively. Those are big numbers. We don't get that kind of result all the time with medications. Now, those three things, high cholesterol, high blood pressure, and high blood sugar, those three things drive heart disease. And this last image is probably, for me, the most important. This is an image looking at Transcendental Meditation effects on reducing mortality, heart disease, and stroke. By how much? By 47%. It was a long-term randomized trial in older African American patients with coronary disease. This kind of a stunning impact, unimaginable in the Transcendental Meditation group. And when you talk about all causes of death, and you can reduce them by that much, as well as non-fatal strokes and non-fatal heart attacks, these are spectacularly large impacts.
They say that you can predict outcomes by looking at zip codes. We were in a situation at our school where nothing worked, everything was broken. The school was a bus stop for teachers. They didn't stay long. We had 89% of the kids were at or below the poverty level. I had 60 kids whose parents, mother and father, were both incarcerated. So we had a lot of things to overcome. And Quiet Time helped us change that predictive power of demographics. The faculty decided to stay. The students and the teachers became more joyful. 86% drop in suspensions over a 3-year period. Looking at the GPA change, we made a 42-point gain on the state testing. And when I left the school, we were at 98.6% daily attendance, which was the highest in that part of town and the second highest in the middle school system.
I've been a principal, elementary, middle school, and high school. I've worked all levels. I've been a classroom teacher. I know what happens in the classroom. And when you go in there and you see kids, and all of us have them in America, where their heads are just down. They're just out of it while you're trying to teach. Why? Because of their life, because of their stress. If we want to get to where every politician talks about getting up there, we're not going to do it with the same old stuff that we've been doing, reconstituting schools, oh, that sounds great, and that's rearranging the furniture on the Titanic, but I want a new vessel. Folks, please join us in getting on a new vessel. This is the number one greatest civil rights issue of our time. And we're not going to solve it doing all that same stuff. We're going to solve this by taking on and thinking about what really gets kids turned on. You've got to go see it. You've got to sit in an auditorium with, 300-400 middle school kids, go to an auditorium with 600 high school kids, and hear a pin drop? I know all of us would think that if you asked everybody to close their eyes, they'd be hitting each other, putting gum on their hair, or doing something crazy. But to actually have kids, that is empowerment. You want to empower young people who grew up with nothing? This is the most powerful tool we could give them. This is beyond just an education. This is about learning who you are and what you can be and the power that you have within yourself to be something more than you ever dreamed of being.